The Death Rider storyline in AEW is absolutely god-awful. It is one of the least entertaining and, quite frankly, like demoralizing main event angles that any wrestling company has had in a very long time. Now, granted, back in like 2019, WWE could have made a monumental case for things like Goldberg winning the World Championship, or I believe the Universal Championship, at Crown Jewel or whatever Saudi Blood Money show that was. You could have made a case for one of the WWE Championship wins of Randy Orton, which obviously went nowhere. Like, there's a bunch of stuff you could have said. But the reality is that right now, I think it's clear. Jon Moxley, in what is, I believe, his third official AEW World Championship reign, fourth official AEW World Championship reign, I believe. This is his worst world title reign ever. And this is also the worst AEW world title reign ever. And I know there are going to be some people who say, oh man, like, what about CM Punk's world title reign? Both of them, which both ended very flat, of course. What about MJF's world title reign? What about Samoa Joe's world title reign? It can't be worse than Samoa Joe's. And to you guys, I say, yes, it can, because we've been watching it for the past 6 months. Jon Moxley has not been cooking with his Death Riders angle. There was a point where we all thought it may have been leading to something bigger. There was a point where we all thought that there was more than meets the eye with this angle, where we all thought that there was the potential for this to grow, that there was the potential for this to become something that was just bigger than AEW versus the Death Riders, this insurgent group. Potentially there was Shane McMahon. Potentially there was even the idea that they were working for Tony Khan the entire time. There's so much you could have done, so much you could have said, so much you could have had happen that unfortunately did not materialize. And the saddest thing, honestly, quite frankly, about this whole Jon Moxley Death Rider angle, like the absolute saddest thing for me has been seeing, a guy in Jon Moxley who, again, I once thought of as the pinnacle, the peak of AEW. I mean, the peak of wrestling, really. He really, at one point, was the guy in 2020, 2019, when he first went onto the scene. But now he's just go away heat. And that's not what you're supposed to be doing with a guy like Jon Moxley. That is one of the cornerstones of your company. And you are doing so much well. Like, you have, at that pay-per-view, at Revolution last week, you had Toni Storm versus Mariah May, which should have main evented. That was an absolute 5-star classic. You had Konosuke Takeshita versus Kenny Omega, which many people are arguing was a 5-star classic. You had Kyle Fletcher versus Will Ospreay in one of the greatest steel cage matches I've ever seen in any company. And you followed that up. Those 3 banger matches. You follow that up with probably one of the worst main events that AEW has ever put on. If not the worst. Shout out Jay White versus MJF, Full Gear 2023. And I don't think that, like, this is like a thing where, oh, well, all they need is to make this into a bigger thing than it is, or all they need is, 1 or 2 more pieces and they're good now. No, I genuinely believe that right now there isn't a way forward. And if the plan here is to wait it out until All In, if the plan here is to wait it out until July and just kind of see where you're at, that's the wrong plan. You have an out. April 4th, 5th, 6th, one of those dates. You have an out that weekend in Philadelphia, AEW Dynasty, Swerve Strickland versus presumably Jon Moxley for the AEW World Championship. You not only have the opportunity with that match What's up, Wall Street Money? You not only have the opportunity with that match to cook what could be an amazing story, the story of the rematch of Swerve Strickland versus Will Ospreay, one of the best matches of the entire year last year. You can run that back, telling the story of Will Ospreay fighting back, and that 2024 may have been Swerve Strickland's year, but 2025 is the year of the aerial assassin. And then, on top of that, right now, AEW is sitting at about 12,000 tickets sold for All In, Texas. It's supposed to be their biggest show of the year. Right now, it is not going to be, quite frankly. It is not on pace to be. But there's still the chance that you can make the most of it. You can get 20,000 people in that stadium. You can get a good crowd. You can get some hype. You can get some energy. You can get some views. You can get some momentum behind that show if you take the belt off of Moxley and book an all-star versus an all-star, Swerve Strickland, Will Ospreay. The future is now they are the present. Book them against each other for the biggest, richest prize in the business, which, by the way, has not been seen on AEW TV since October. Like, what the fuck are we doing, folks? What are we doing here? I'm supposed to believe that the AEW World Championship is the richest prize in the world, that everyone is gunning for this belt, that the respect that this belt has is bigger than any belt in professional wrestling. I'm supposed to believe that. And yet the guy who says he's defending AEW, the guy who says he's defending the AEW World Championship, everything it represents, blah, 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 refuses to give it the respect that it deserves, refuses to go out there and show off arguably the richest prize in the business. To me, that's not telling me that Moxley is trying to protect the AEW World Championship. That tells me that Moxley is trying to diminish the World Championship. And I'm not talking about Jon Moxley, the person. I'm talking about the character. This is more of an indictment on the AEW booking than anything else. I don't think that there's a way back with Moxley right now. At this moment, there just isn't. You got to get rid of the belt. You have to put it on Swerve Strickland, build up that big match, and give Ospreay potentially a massive moment, either at All In Texas, or if he falls short there, follow it up the next month in England, in London, at Forbidden Door 2025, which shaping up to be a pretty big show because you got that. You potentially got that. You potentially also have the rematch of Gabe Kidd and Kenny Omega, which is set to be a banger. But, of course, I want to hear from you guys in the chat. Be sure to hit that like button if you haven't already done so. Subscribe and hit that notification bell.